Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset podcast for this concept books and this episode talk about I guess this is like me 2025 or stuff like that. And stuff like that, me relent and stuff like that would have gone already. And what will have happened is that is I guess this lesson for me was that because I finally got my tablet fixed again and it's fixed well, but at the same time I still have some issues. And with everything, what you realize is that in the adult world, or just with everything, like you have a family and stuff like that, you actually they give you gifts and stuff like that. But when you're actually in the working world and stuff like that, you understand how hard it was to actually get some of the stuff. Not only get some of the stuff, but actually get it right. Like get it right and stuff like that. So you actually appreciate this stuff. But at the same time, I only appreciate this stuff knowing that okay, there's better. So like for example, boom, I would appreciate the gift of from having a PS4 and I appreciate that PS4 deals and stuff like that. Even though it costs some stuff. But now appreciate the PS4 and all this stuff. And that was like an upgrade, like we did have a PS4 boom and get the PS4 and that changed the game. But at the same time, we um what happened is that what you actually reach adulthood and stuff like that, you realize how hard it is not to actually get the latest stuff. Like actually, and then what happens is that when you actually get the latest stuff, what happens when it breaks and all these stuff. Like these are lessons where you actually have to learn. Be like, wow, that is actually a grind. It's not actually easy to out there. So get the latest product and all these stuff. It's not easy and it's a grind. And it's like, oh wow, that's actually wow. So knowing that and what means that I got the tablet and I still have some issues and stuff like that. I'll be like, you'll be like, oh, so this lesson this year is like, oh, there are various lessons, there are various ways of getting things fixed. They'll be like, oh, we can get it fixed temporarily and all these stuff. I never did the episode I said before about transferring storage and stuff like that. We'll be like, okay, this tablet I have or stuff like that I have it for years and all these stuff and fixing it and all these things. And after fixing it for a while, it may actually be better to actually just go and and get a new one and all these. You actually reach up and make get a new one and all this. But hey, I actually like the tablet and I would actually go back in actually fixing up the tablet and stuff like that. But in that time without the tablet and all those stuff, it actually all those different skills. There's a washing, hand washing and all these stuff. And that's the thing that I actually went to university and all this stuff. That's the thing about university. I went to university. See the days when I'm out there using dryer and all these stuff. Dryer and all these stuff. And it's important, you coming out of poverty and stuff like that. Actually, see these experiences. The other thing I said, like sometimes you'll be like, oh my god, spend all this money. Like those experiences and that's the reason why go and try to invest in university and stuff like that. Like those experiences, you actually see the future, and it's like okay, when you actually go and invest that and see the future and you actually invest in the family and stuff like that, those stuff actually upgrades the family. So like years of hand washing. That's the thing about you hear years of hand washing, then booms, a washing machine comes. And it's like, oh my god. And that's the thing now. We had washing machine before, but we actually upgrade washing machine. And I know we have multiple washing machine and all these stuff. And it's like, oh, smart. We have smart machines, smart washing machine now. And even though my one is actually not, but probably has a very functional smart machine now. It's like, oh no, those stuff are actually out there, so you have to be out there. So grateful for it. But at the same time, boom, what growing, what you have to actually learn is that okay, boom. In the university days, those were things that luxury. In the adult world now, one of the things just like the stove and stuff like that, learning how to actually care for the machine and all those stuff. These are the adult things that you actually have to go to. Like, okay, learn how to care for the product and all these stuff. So that when actually you actually get rid of it and all those stuff, sometimes be like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's actually somewhat workable for someone out there with no machine at all. Like that's the thing. Will be like, oh, one man trash is another man treasure and all these stuff. Will be like, oh, when actually put in the work and actually learn these stuff. Some of this stuff, some of the trash that you always say throwing away is actually maybe not trash. It's just that you actually out there be like, oh, it's a benefit now for me to actually upgrade to the next level. I'm actually able to do the next level, but no, you know, it is good to but actually get the fundamentals right. So okay, I know how to fix a machine now and all these stuff. But what happens that because I actually know how to fix a machine and go out and actually buy the machine, I may not even need to fix it again and all these stuff. I actually go out and be like, oh, I actually know buy the right one this time and all these things. But the fundamental is there. That's the thing where we like, oh, yeah, talk about recession proof and all these stuff. Like prevention is better than cure and all these stuff. All these stuff you would do, just like I talk about life insurance and stuff like that, all these stuff. All these stuff are ways to prevent the worst. To say, yo, if things go bad, if it goes that bad, we have this. And what happens is that because we actually be like, oh my god, we go that bad, we have this. Sometimes it never reaches, even the worst situation is not that bad. It's the worst situation is not bad when I actually look at it and be like, oh my god, bro, it's not that bad because we actually was investing in the prevention from way before. And it's like, oh, the worst of it. So what happens that doomsday thing now? I was thinking like, oh yeah, doomsday thing from like 2012 and the year 2020 and all this stuff and 2020 year next. What happens that a doomsday thing is not actually as doomsday as it sounds because what happens that we actually be because we out there so proclaiming that is out there so doomsday from way before. By the time we actually come, the skeptics and all these stuff gone through and test all the hypotheses and all these stuff. The people out there so try to make it right, go out and make everything and then the realists actually go on and do this stuff. So by the time it actually come, we actually have a foolproof strategy to actually approach the situation. And then boom, what will happen is that the day come and pass, and what seems eventful is event will be eventful and day, but just that if it actually happens, and it's like oh, but at the after it will be like oh, it was just another day, it was just another day, and it's like cool, cool, it was just another day, but it was an eventful day. It was an eventful day when they actually work to actually prevent that. And it's like, cool, cool. So those are stuff where be like, that's the thing about this length where be like, oh, what happened with this time without the tablet and all these stuff and the various phone and you record those episodes and all these stuff is that those time without it, I actually go out and see music, navigating the real world, exploring nature and all these stuff. And what I actually learned with this length is that, nothing is wrong with that and all this. So going out and experience nature and get sun and stuff like that. But in what I actually want to be like, oh, okay, I don't want to go back to the days without technology. Like, you'll be like, okay, yeah, we don't want to go back to those days to say, yo, we go back to the days without technology. It's good to say, oh, there's an experience in nature and all these stuff. But it's good to say, yo, we don't want to go back to those days without technology and all these stuff. And we want better technology, but hey, we don't want to go back to the days without technology. We see the days without technology to say, yeah, yeah, we actually do not want to go to those days, but appreciate the days when we uh we don't when we actually get it back now. just like days will be like, oh my god, you hear what it is of terrible internet and stuff like that. Even this internet, there's better and all these stuff with advances, but you know, we live the days without internet and stuff without like to say, okay, yeah, we do not want to go to the days when we don't have like electricity and all these stuff. So that was the thing, and be like, okay, we don't want to go back to those days when we don't have those luxuries. And it takes actually, and that's the new thing, right? It takes actually going out with those luxuries and all these stuff to see that okay, when we actually get it back in its best form or in its best form, and that's the thing we're actually realizing in those stuff. Where we like some of the stuff that we actually need are in it are it's out there, it's possible. So sometimes we're like, okay, that I thought that okay, boom, growing up where I coming from and all this stuff, a podcast like this couldn't be actually reach this far. Or happens that because I actually put in effort to reach this far. Yeah, people that do podcasts and stuff like that actually coming out and actually taking it further and all these stuff and because they're taking it further I actually can do more and all these things and boom after so they see me also do YouTube and all these stuff. I see all these stuff and what happens that all these avenues will be like, oh that what that was it's not say impossible or whatever, it's just that actually becomes more money, it becomes more manageable, it becomes more possible. It be like, oh, the average person now can do it now and all this stuff. So it's like, cool. So just like the days that of me, oh, yeah, so struggling, I, during to school and all these stuff, and be like, oh, the bus days and all these stuff, and be like, oh yeah, those days were the days, and the days in Knoxford and all these stuff. Those days were the days I know I have my license and all these stuff. I'm like, yeah, those days were the days. But ideally, in the future, I don't want to go back to a day where I don't have the ability to drive. And it's like, cool. What happens that it took us the the time to say, yeah, we didn't have the ability to drive and all these stuff, take taxi and all these stuff. To say, yeah, we there's go through the states, say, okay, yeah, we appreciate, we actually understand the use of of the occupation and all these stuff. Like, yo, and that thing where we like, wow, even the first world stuff like that, cabs and all these stuff, they actually have those days to say, yeah, the strive out of poverty and all these stuff is to say, yeah, when we actually achieve these stuff, we do not actually want to go back to those days when we do not have those luxuries. So that's the thing about not having those luxuries. I may be giving up some of those luxuries for a period of time to actually see it and say, okay, yeah, this is what it's actually like without those luxuries. So it's like in and that's the thing we be like, oh, if we actually go back to the days of taking taxi and stuff like that, no, it would really bother us some way. Look away. It would bother us some way. But it's actually those experiences to say, yeah, when we actually work for these stuff. When I go out and be like, oh yeah, I actually work to get a degree and all these stuff and all these stuff. We'll be like, but now when you're underemployed and stuff like that. Though these are experiences that actually I go through to say, yeah, we do not want to go back to those days. I could those days. And even today, I still have things that I complain about and all these stuff. But I will still prefer today than those days than before. And what happens that actually, what happens that I say, cold, no use anti as use it takes like sometimes actually take those things to say, okay, yeah, this is when we actually get to back, we're like, oh yeah, we actually really needed this. We actually appreciate this. And it's like, oh yeah, we ain't take this lightly and all this stuff. We can go without it. That's the thing about losing it and so like say, okay, yeah, we can actually go without it. It's actually possible. But no, we actually say, yeah, we do not want to go back to the days when we do not have this luxury. That's the thing when we be like, oh my god, the days when you see me out there, so going to say, okay, I'm going to get the best team. That's the thing about going out and say, oh my god, the best team of doctors and all these stuff, doctors and all these stuff actually come and work on me and all these stuff. And be like, yeah, yeah, we actually have those stuff at my disposal and then boom, bam. But I don't want to go back to the days when I don't have the best doctors or teams and stuff like that, not at my disposal. it's good to know that yo, I actually have days when I didn't have those stuff. Like yo, we do not want that. We don't want do not want to go back to the days when we do not have the best doctors or teams at our disposal. But just knowing that hey, it's actually possible to actually survive without the best doctors and teams. But hey, we do not want to go back to the days when we do not have the best doctors and teams at our disposal. Like our cool. So that's the thing when we like, okay, yeah. Sometimes, yeah, in this version of the length, you'll be like, okay, yeah, we actually see um uh, what happens that sometimes going through the poverty and stuff like that, coming out of my grandma's house and stuff like that, struggle to come out of the house and stuff like that. And what I realized was the fact that she taught us some principles. Say, okay, yo, make sure you have this thing in check and all these stuff. And those stuff were valid to certain point. Were valid, but it took me going on with this stuff to say, yeah, bro, we do not want to go back to the days when we didn't have this thing, where we didn't have a technology and all these stuff. It's good to know about those days when they didn't exist. That's the reason why I have the podcast and all these stuff. You hear about the spooky stories of histories of days when I did have good internet and stuff like that. But at least when they actually come and see me, I have the best internet as I can. And be like, okay, yeah. You go to have those stories and that thing about those stuff and be like, oh, when at the bottom and all these stuff. It's good. It's fun and all to say, yo, the people at the top are people is popular and all these stuff. And I say, at one point I was popular as well. So I feel like I knew a friend group coming out. I'd be like, oh my god, I remember this time when I do this and all these stuff. I'm like, yeah. Yeah, it's good to see that it's fun and all these things, but we actually work to see that when we actually move away from those stuff, we actually not going back to those days. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, we actually did that to say that yeah, those are fun now to actually go through, and I can always I think sometimes about reminiscing and all those stuff, I can always go back and reminisce to back in those days, and I will get more tolerant of the days they bring up all the bad stuff, the embarrassing stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm actually tired of those stuff. But it actually took me to actually go through those stuff to say, yeah, we did that to get here. We did that to get here, and so that when we actually get here, we do not want to go back to those days. And it's like, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. I be like, sometimes be like, oh yeah, took us going there, but sometimes you have to be like, oh, first thing you actually have to do something before you actually can do it right. And it's like, ah, cool, cool, cool. But those are stuff. This year actually do, I where be like, oh, going out and actually have to find a way to get the technology fixed right. And that's the thing that some they get the technology. One of the thing about fixing this tablet was that I was actually out there so spending a little bit of money to actually get a temporary fix. Boom, then I found a better person now to actually get it fixed, but it fixed better, but it was actually not fully fixed. And actually, use come back to the knowledge of reading is fundamental. Using that to actually going out, reading this the receipt and stuff like that, they actually go out and be like, okay, what using that they actually gave me made me able to actually get the item fixed again without actually repaying a cost and all those stuff. So that's the power of actually going out, finding the best source, but at the same time reading everything that they give you the stuff for a reason. So take your time and actually read it and then boom, actually getting the best value. But even the best value right there is there something better. But it's like, oh yeah. They get to that far and those time without to say, oh yeah, those time without technology was a drug, and it shows that we actually can live without it. But we don't want to go back to those days. That's the reason why this episode I talk about flossing, brushing, and talk about electric and batteries, thing like gas stove versus electric stove and all these stuff. Stuff. The university days versus the adult years and all these stuff. We were like, oh. you get those luxuries in those years to say that, yeah, you're coming from a family, from a family of poverty and all these stuff, bro. You're coming up from a of poverty and all these stuff to say, yeah, when you leave these places and go back to there, you don't want to go back to those days. There's a reason why you come to university. There's the reason why you be like, oh, the University of Western that's is the top 1% and all these stuff you hear the people them preaching and all this. They say just say, yeah, when you actually leave it, don't go back to the 99%. Like don't go back to the ways of the ghetto and all these stuff. Like, oh, you're seeing the best of the best to go back to the worst of the worst. And it's like, cool, cool, cool. your work to go to see the best of the best. I think I'll be like, oh, all these stuff. That's the thing. All the stories will be like, oh my god, I used to do that one and all these stuff. After I get it, all these stuff. Like legit. That's the thing about this piece, and be like, oh, that sometimes is better than the alternative than you see in your day. That is 10 times better than the alternative than sometimes, many times. You out there to be out there, so going out and struggling and all these stuff, but it's like, yo, sometimes that is 10 times better than the alternative to say, yeah, we actually wasn't there. It actually wasn't there. And those knowledge that I actually gained those 3 years actually get me somewhere and push somebody somewhere and be like, oh, you push it to actually do certain stuff and be like, cool, cool, cool. And it's like, oh, open up the idea to say, yeah, we actually can move this far. Or what happens that you open the idea of saying things that seem impossible. That's the thing I remember. Sometimes I try going out, like boom, I go out and ask somebody like, oh, what do they sell this and stuff like that. And like, no, no. And it's like, no. And it's like, oh. But we had to actually ask to get the answer. If we didn't ask, you would even see the podcast. You would even see the podcast. So that's the thing I'd be like, wow. Most of the stuff that we actually thought was impossible is just that we actually went out and asked, and then when we actually asked and we got the answer, sometimes the answer is very demoralizing and embarrassing, but hey, it's better than zero. It's better than zero, and what happens is that when we actually what happens better than zero, sometimes you actually get the worst answer. That doesn't mean that the answer it means that okay, that person is not the first to actually go to get the answer. Or what happens is that you get the answer, but it's like, oh, we don't have the time to execute, and the answer is like, oh, no, we know that it's actually possible here. That's the thing. Everything is possible here. You can actually start a YouTube and get it fully monetized and everything. All these stuff is actually possible here. It's just that hey, it takes effort and all those stuff, and but it takes time to actually not have those luxuries to say yeah. When we actually get those luxuries, appreciate them, but at the same time, we don't want to go back to the draconian. So that's the reason why I be like, oh, sometimes you hear me say, boom, these stuff and all this stuff, but hey, I'm actually working towards getting a better things, upgrading, getting the old and all this. Because what is that? Even the old, even we can satisfy with all these stuff. That's why I say try the premium version of certain stuff. There's actually something better on the other side. We just don't know what the hell. Yeah, it's actually something. This is going to relate to another episode where it'll be like, oh, I'm complaining. I actually talk about episode where I talk about using the premium version of things, and what actually was that I actually use the premium version of certain stuff, and what I realized is that I tend to go to a free version of the thing that I was using premium version for more is going to relate to something that I actually was saying, which is that, well, the premium version of anything is a premium version for a reason. Even though I actually prefer the free version of certain stuff, the premium version for a reason. I guess I'm going to try to explain that next episode. But I guess this episode is basically I learned lesson of actually getting the tablet fixed and stuff like that. Is like say, yo, those period of actually giving up something that stuff like that, you say, yeah, we actually can go through those stuff. This episode you hear me talking about getting grocery lists and all these stuff, getting those grocery and all these stuff. those things are there now. It's like okay, and I actually write grocery list and stuff like that. But hey, when actually see me out there with my smart tech and be like, oh my god, pull up my groceries and all those stuff. You don't see me in the grocery list and all grocery shop and be like, oh my god. With my paper and all these stuff. It would be like, oh, pull up my grocery list and all these stuff. Be like, okay, yeah, we actually what happens is that you don't see me out there, so actually doing that out of not is me actually remembering it, knowing that there were the days that we actually have to write this stuff on paper. And I think I can remember write this stuff, I actually remember it and all these stuff. All those lessons that from our tours and all these stuff, carrying us bag and all these stuff. To see that when we actually drop those days, you'll be like, yeah, mm-hmm. Those days, just like everyone a story going to it just a funny, it would be just a spooky story, but like, yeah. Back in those days, Obi and all this stuff and all these things and all this, and be like, oh yeah, it's real. We actually have to go through these experiences to say that, we actually live here, live in this luxury life. Don't take it lightly. It's like, oh yeah, we actually see that luxury life. It's like, yeah, those Obi and all these stuff, and be like, what happens that black magic and all these stuff, and it's like science, man, they're actually using science and not science, like, oh, yeah, all these luxuries and all those stuff was say, yeah, we actually go through and start living the nice life, you know, it's not important. The person telling the story can always come in and be like, yeah, those were the days. Those were the days. Remember those days when Hello was my home, and all these stuff, It's like, yeah. And when I come back but hell is not my own home anymore, bro. It's like it's a different kind of hell now. It's like, oh, it's a better. We're not back in those days again, bro. It's like, oh, yeah. Or it's like, oh, we can go back to those days when hell is our home. But saying, yeah, yeah, we actually don't want to go back there. It's like, yeah, but it's like that's the thing where we like that's the thing with tech and stuff like that. Going on the streets and actually have to work. And that's the thing, after I get the license and stuff like that, after I go out and be like, um, I actually have to go out and take my time and learn all these stuff. But they have different ways now with technology, do car simulation. That's the thing where we be like, oh, if I'm actually going out, there's a growing up and playing games and stuff like that. There was a friend that I had actually was doing truck simulator and stuff like that. If I if I actually was out there so interested in cars or doing all those stuff, we can buy a truck simulator and all this stuff. I would actually go and miss out. Or I not only that, even my game playing days, if I actually took time to actually sit down and learn how to instead of playing it for fun, learning how to drive and all these stuff, using those games as ways to drive going through a driving school would be 10 times easier and all these stuff. But hey, I was actually having fun, and there's nothing wrong with actually having fun playing those games and all these stuff. But knowing that, we actually take it serious. You take it serious. And it's like, oh, no, you know that all those avenues, it takes a new form to it. But like, oh, yeah, we can actually use it in the various different ways. All these basic stuff you can use to actually rise a nation. Like, oh, wow. Oh, playing games and all these stuff. Oh, if you actually take the time to actually play games and learn and be like, oh, changing gears and stuff like that. I actually went to the driving school to actually realize that, oh, changing gears and stuff like that is actually not as hard as I thought. It's just that we actually need to learn some stuff. Actually, need to learn some stuff and all these and they are cool. But that's the thing where be like, oh, um, your time without stuff, using technology and stuff like that gives you time to show that it's actually possible to live without it. But when you actually get it, you'll be like, get it back and be like, yeah, we do not actually want to go back to the days without it. We do not want to go back to the days without technology and all these stuff. But when we actually get that technology, we want to go back to better technology now. We actually want to invest and get better technology now. And that relates to the episode about transferring storages and transferring and storage and all these stuff. I'll be like, okay, that's the important thing now. So everything with PC and then all these stuff, all these technology and stuff like that. The core thing now is actually finding a way to actually save your data and all these stuff and be like, oh my god, the thing in 2025 coming out and like, oh, data is your most important currency. Though let me use ads and all these stuff to tag this and all these stuff. Actually knowing that this will be like okay, yeah, those you can actually see that as a bad thing. But actually now taking ownership of your own data now and be like, okay, yeah, just actually coming out and saving your data, taking ownership of our data and be like, okay, this is our stuff now, and then save it and and able to transfer, and then what happens is able to transfer it. What will happen is that now you're actually able to move to a new tech easier, a new tech easier. Then actually when you move to a new tech easier, maybe it's not only that the storage is getting higher, but the things that actually even get lower. And like, oh, cool, or something like that. It's like, I can't tell you that yet. This is the theory. This is the theory part. That's the thing about some of these episodes. You're seeing the theory part of it. Then you actually see the practice and all these stuff. Some of the things are theory. What happens, and that's the funny thing about the podcast. You can actually tell which part is theory now or what is practice, what actually happened, what actually happened, and stuff like that. We can tell when it actually what happens that we actually see like, oh wow. Now we actually go to the world and see, yeah, this is why we actually do this. Yeah, cool, cool. But what's actually theory, what is actually practice. Like, cool. But you know what? Yeah. So, but this experience to say, we act in the adult world, and this is the thing, in the adult world, and stuff like when you leave university or stuff like that, and those levels happen for at different times. You can't, or this will be working from primary school days, or this working from high school days, or whatever. But what happens is that you actually, at some point, you can get gift from the family to give you stuff and all these stuff is always good. Those are stuff that actually break out. That's like a gift giving in the family and all these stuff. So yeah, get some stuff. To say yeah, we actually get this stuff and invest in our future. If we can't afford it, we're like okay, actually give them something. Something is better than nothing. But knowing that when you as the individual now have to actually get these stuff, get your stuff itself, and actually have to go out and earn it, you're gonna realize how hard it is just to even get one. You get one, not only get one, actually fix it and all these stuff to actually get it right and all these stuff. And this you apply to car, this applies with everything. So to get it out, to fix it and all these stuff, and actually go through those processes now, you appreciate the price. You appreciate the price of it and all these stuff. That doesn't mean that they're gonna not gonna destroy it and all these stuff. You just know that you actually appreciate the price. You actually put in appreciate the work that you have to actually get it. And then we actually get it now, it's like okay, we actually work for this, bro. We actually so that's the difference between actually getting it as a gift and then actually get work towards it. You'd be like, oh, nothing is wrong with getting it as a gift. And like, yeah, we actually see it. And it's like, oh, this is a utility to say, yeah, we actually was, or this are actually put in work. We see the benefit of using this and all this stuff. We have to see in the future. But knowing that where we this version of the length is that when you actually get it as a gift and you actually lose it, they struggle to actually get it back and be like, oh wow, that is actually a grind to actually get these stuff. Like getting a new phone. Like I talk about one of the episode we talk about getting that versus the iPhone and stuff like that. It's like wow, it actually took everything out of me just to even get one of the not even latest phone. Latest phone refurbish. That's the word now, bro. Refurbish. And it's like, wow, that's actually wow. We get the phone refurbished. Then we even get it new. We get it refurbished. And it's like, wow, that actually took everything out of us to actually get a refurbished phone. And it's like, wow. But those things are actually lessons to say, yeah, actually actually went through those lessons to say no. in May 2025 now, it's like wow, we actually have a somewhat better approach to stuff. We actually have a better appreciation of certain certain items. We in that we actually it's not impossible to get it, but when we actually get it now, certain stuff we actually have to do so that when we actually get it, it's easier. And what happens is that when it's actually easier, the principle of actually getting rid of it and then getting the new actually gets better. It'll be like, oh, certain stuff now you would actually always go, I have to just throw away and all these stuff because it has no value. But at the same time, over time, this stuff that you actually have just gain value over time, and it just be like, oh, you when you actually before you actually throw it away, you be like, oh, these stuff, and I think we actually each year the stuff that you out there so throwing away is actually way more than before. It's way more than before. Like sometimes be like, oh, some stuff that we have for years, and be like, oh, well, it's throwing away, and that's the thing where like, oh, the university event and all these stuff. Be like, that's the reason why I be like, oh, university alumni events and all these stuff, somewhat important and all these stuff. It be like, oh, what will happen is that sometime you go to a university and hear about university experience and all these stuff. And what the funny thing about my university experience was that that was the best they could actually give us at that time. When I was actually there, actually see the dorm was actually being renovated. We actually see now there's a tiles being done and all these stuff. You hear me talking about seeing AC, I feel like AC is in my room. Maybe actually when I go there, I see every room now have AC, bro. It's like cool, man. When I actually go by there, cool, cool. No, every room have AC. It's like cool. I was like no, nothing is wrong with that. Nothing is wrong with actually every room having AC now. But back in my days, we didn't have those stuff. But hey, we actually have to go through and experience those stuff to say, yeah, maybe that's the best I could actually get going from 2015 to 2018, and then boom, maybe I see me go back and they say, yo, if you go back, I could actually go and cash in all these stuff and get a better thing real quick. And it's like, wow, that's actually why we can actually go back and cash in all these stuff that I've gone on over these years for something better. And what will happen is that, oh, um, all those so they'll go back and be like, cool, we have a better thing to see. To see, yeah, we actually did these stuff. We actually instead of having the picture and all these accolades, they hear me talking about all these accolades. They see me this with a different thing to say, yeah, this is what we actually did this year. This is what we actually did this year now. We actually I was like, cool, that's something like that. But hey, everything's a work in progress. That's the thing about this podcast. I see years of content, and then boom, you see it, boom. All of a sudden, you see me, it's merch, everything. This is merch of a price. All these, so you me getting sales and all these stuff. And you, but the podcast is about the days, bro. The struggle to actually get these stuff, bro. The struggle. What happens is that basically one day just come. What will happen is that one day just come in and see everything click. You see it's a well working machine. All this is like tax the rich, tax the rich. And it's like, bro. That's all the out there to doing as a listener, bro. They tax the rich, bro. Tax the rich. But yeah, we actually have to work for this stuff, bro. We actually have to work for this stuff. And it's like, cool. Uh, so that's basically the thing where be like, yo, sometimes um this experience without the technology made me actually go without it to see sometimes that's the thing about length or stuff like this length is different where it be like, oh, we actually went through those bad days of walking and all these stuff, walking and all these stuff, struggle go through the process to get a license and all these stuff to say, yeah, we actually do not want to go back to the days without it. That's the thing about freedom and so and all of freedom. They work for those luxuries to say, yeah, when we actually get them, we do not want to go back to those days. That, like, oh, that's the reason why I talk about the girls say, and anyway, I work so hard. Since they all work so hard going at 2020 slavery. Yeah. Those are stuff where we like, those stuff you actually take personal when you actually have to go through a struggle. I think we actually see farmers and all these stuff. We actually see when you go through the process, selling and farming and all these stuff, then boom, you see me on this upgrade from the farming, and see me on saying making a tech hub and a lab and all these stuff. Because you see, all these things are fun. I think about this podcast and stuff like that, fundamental stages is that you always say, hear me listening and all this stuff, and you feel like even in the future and all this stuff. But in reality, what I have to actually do is actually go in the streets, go to my farm, get some food, get pick some tomatoes and all these stuff to actually come in and feed myself. The other stuff that I don't have, I actually spend money so that I could actually eat right, eat food and all these stuff. And then what happens is that those opportunities actually just save me money in actually going out and can do invest. We call this is what we call R&D. These are side projects, bro. We'll be like, oh, yeah, these are fun ideas, bro, to actually do. But in reality, we actually it's not as easy as it look. We'll be like, oh, we actually have come in and food, just like for example, employing one person and stuff like that. We have everything to actually go out and actually employ somebody. We have to actually come in and give them a price and all these stuff. We have to give them, put a salary and all these stuff. Maybe it's stuff that we actually like to do. We have to give them to do and then, no, we actually not doing it again. I was like, I love doing those stuff. Actually, I love doing those stuff. And that's the thing about this part of it where I be like, oh my god, with time without the tech and all these stuff. Yeah, me with time without the tech gave me appreciation now of the fact that yeah, we don't want to go back to the days without technology. But sometimes be like, some of the times I'll be like, maybe reach a point where I have to actually give the technology to somebody else and be like, so that they would actually be not that thing about giving away stuff and the stuff that they actually give away is way could be way more than before and be like, but we're actually giving away that more to say that yo, we actually give that away more. There's something better, but transferring stories, storing this stuff and all these stuff to say our idea to say that when we actually give up these stuff and we get the better, yeah, doesn't what happens that the person get those stuff actually learn the fundamentals of those stuff to say, yeah, when we actually get the better now, we actually do not want to go back to those days of not having those luxuries again. And it's like, cool. That's the thing about things upgrade. You don't want to go back to the days where you don't have it, but knowing that we can actually live without those. It's possible. There was a reality of we not having those luxuries. There was a reality of us not having those things that we have. So it's like, cool. Yeah, we actually didn't have these stuff. So we know it's possible. That's the reason why I be like, okay, those stories from grandma and stuff like that are really important to say. Yeah, we actually did some of these luxuries. It's just with a smart bug, bug man get smarter. Upgrading security and all these stuff. There was a day we didn't have security and all these stuff. And be like, cool. Yeah, so we didn't even need security. So it's like even if it rules are that hey, we don't even need it, bro. But knowing that yo, it's better to have it than and have a better one than to not have it at all. Like those are stuff. Things like washing machine. It's good to know that we can hand wash and use the rain to catch water, go to river, actually get water and all these stuff and washing all these stuff. But when you see me out there, see the washing machine, full water coming from the pipe, no tanks and all these stuff. You just see me coming out and water every day and all these stuff. And it's like it has to be some extinction level event where it be like, oh, when you see me out there going out, no tanks and everything, and reach a point and be like, oh, I can get pre-planned to know that okay, yeah, we ain't gonna have water today and all this. So I'm like, yeah, yeah. Does it mean that you living that futuristic life and all this? So we be like, yeah, we did have these stuff back in the days, bro. So that when we actually know that when we actually have these stuff, yes, we all there's a throwing away tanks, bro. And it's like, bro, those are the trash you see all this a throwing away, and I see all this a throwing away tanks, bro. And it's like, wow, those were called trickle up or trickle down economics. You know, bro. You see me also throwing away tanks, bro. As like what happens at the storage when actually going out and hungry, you realize the tanks is actually a negative impact to the place than before. It's actually making up. That's the thing about reaching a new level. Like some of the stuff that they actually hold on to is actually more negative than positive. And like it's holding you back more than bringing you forward. But we did have those stuff. So it's like yeah, we didn't have those stuff. So it's like we learn to live without it, so that we actually get it. I actually get it right. We actually get it right. That's the thing. Doing it and doing it right is two different story. I'm like, yeah, but we actually have to do it. We actually have to do it. We actually do it now. Be like, okay, we actually reach something. No, we actually have to do it right. And do it right, we'll be like, yo, we ain't doing this. We ain't doing this the wrong way anymore, bro. We ain't doing this the wrong way. We ain't going back to those days of not having. That's the thing about accurate, and that's the funny thing on this journey on poverty. You hear various experience. You hear about the days that you usually have this and all these stuff. You usually hear about days when you usually have railroads and all these. And I say, yeah, yeah, we're gonna get those stuff back. We ain't get those stuff back. I want to get them back, bro. We ain't going back to the days without it, bro. We ain't going back to the days without it. We ain't going back to those days without it, bro. Yeah, that's the thing about the podcast and stuff like that. We actually get and stuff like that. We work and get the fundamentals and everything right. We like, there won't be a day when we did have it. You won't hear a history when we did have those days, bro. Every day you see a new form of the way of telling you that, bro. We did have back in the days we used to have these stuff to sell to get it back. And we that going back to those days that we didn't have it, bro. That's the thing. But we used to have these stuff, bro. So even in the worst situation, they see everybody out there be like, oh my god, we out there so learn how to build a car and start self farming, bro. That's the reason why I see me out there so learning farming. Cause when you see me out there so with that car, you see me out there so with that car out there so selling and actually getting customers, bro. Let's say so the country reach a new level where be like, we ain't going back to those days of out there so farming and selling stuff like that. From you see me out there so pulling up, making a cart and out there so selling and actually getting sales. Every farmer will be like, bro, we ain't going back to those days again, bro. We ain't going back to those days of farming again, bro. They actually see a better, and they actually see me out there, bro. They see a better way, and be like, wow, wow. We didn't even need the carts no more. Like, a car could actually carry this stuff, but they actually see me out here, so with the car, be like, bro, you're the worst, you're the worst market there. But actually had to see me out there, so be in the market first to say, wow, this we actually could do this thing better, bro. Bending on the road, all these, like we actually have to go out there and do it to see what the better is like. Spectators the most stuff. We actually have to become the player to say, why, so that when we actually when you hear the podcast and you get the lesson and be like, this is the reason why we always are doing this way. Be like, we're never going back to this way. Be like, no, what happens? No, what happens is that there's always going to be a formula to get to that place. That's the funny thing about doing it this way. It'll be like forever you will always have the formula to get back to this place. So once you see me go from farming, you see me going to full tech and full business stuff like that. There's always going to be the formula for you to know how to move from farming to get a car and all this stuff and all this stuff, the luxurious life. Always be that farmer. It's always be the farmer to move from day to day. And it's like, but just knowing that, when you actually move to those places, you will never go back to those places again. Be like, oh, you will never go back to the days without tech and all these stuff. So you see me out there, so and or there's a pushing carts. You see me pushing carts with my technology, bro. You see me out there pushing carts with my technology and all these stuff. Be like, cool. You see me out there so revolutionizing this stuff like that. Be like, cool. That's how I'm using it. Like, But what happens is that you will never see me go back. You'll never see me go back to those days of not having those luxuries. Just that you always have to find different ways. No, what will happen is that you will learn why back in those days we did have those things where be like, oh, why when you actually see me out there so with the cars and all these stuff, feel like for the first few days you see me with a phone and all that stuff. You see me always focusing and all this, getting the sales, getting the thing, learning why all these stuff spoil and all these stuff. You see me always learning those stuff, learn those fundamentals and be like, okay, we actually come out and find those. And the thing, man, hear me saying those stuff. I don't want to actually do it, but hey, we actually maybe I actually go out and do it. But when we actually go out and actually do this stuff, and you see me out there, so and you finally see me out there, so with that, doing it with the tech and all these stuff, and be like, cool, this and stuff, be like, uh, those days without the technology and all these stuff actually gave me time to actually learn to say, we actually, you actually have to focus to know that, we actually have to do this, farming and all this stuff is a skill, like, it's no joke. We actually can be out there, so multitasking, I know there's a multitasking, I know there's a being a farmer and all this stuff, like, you're going out and you'll be like, oh, no, I understand when I go back in those days. You see me out there buying breadfruit. You see they walk the whole market street, just to buy one breadfruit and all these stuff. You learn those stuff, and then what happens is that now you can actually go out and be like, oh, no, when I actually go out, go out on the street, you see me out there with the best. You see me out there with only the best um breakthrough or anything like that, because I actually go through the process of actually rigorously understanding why the hell that thing goes. So everything you see on the market from me is something that, we actually go through the rigorous testing of understanding that, those were the days. That's the thing about it. Those were the days. Remember the days I'm just walking the street and all these stuff, and for years, the thing was on the streets for years, and be like, to say, when we actually go that days, you see all those quality stuff, and be like, oh, we ain't going back to those days. So what will happen is that you go from spectator to player. That's the thing. Spectator to player. You go out there, so, and it's like, oh those are stuff. You be like, cool. Now you actually understand. But those are things. I be like, oh, there are better ways to do. You can actually move up in different basic stuff will never change, stuff like that. But you have to use your ways to actually go. Um, what happens is that there's a best way to do stuff. That's basically the basic thing for this length. That's what it's like. There's the best way to do those stuff. But on your journey, you may not be able to afford the best way. So you're gonna have to actually afford learn how to do the second with the good, the better, and then we actually get the best way, be like, okay, we get the best way now. No, we're actually not going back to those days. We're actually not going back to those days when we're not the best way. Only thing is best. Best. That's the thing. We're like, oh, only best. We ain't going back to those days when we didn't have better and all this stuff. But hey, knowing that, and then what happens that it becomes a luxury. It'll be like, okay, now every day Everybody in the industry just doing the best now. Everybody always say just doing the best now. It's like cool. And then what happens that the price just becomes stuck and it becomes slow. And that means that we actually have to upgrade. Something has to change. And it's like cool. But it's just that we didn't actually so that's basically the lesson for this episode. Be like, time without tech or time without something. You have to actually go and live the experience. That's the thing about home ownership. You can always listen to YouTube people as a real estate and all these stuff. When they actually going out, that's the funny thing about you are seeing and reacting and all these stuff about all this stuff. When they actually coming out and actually have to reach this, they actually have to do this stuff. I'd be like, oh wow. Actually you actually have to go in there, you actually have to and what happens at each level, there's a complaint of what happens that eventually you become more understanding of it and more tolerating of it and be like, you know, there was the days that we didn't have these stuff. I did have the luxury to say, okay, I'm gonna go and see this or that, this doctor or these stuff. I would actually prefer the days of saying that I go there and all there's a bashing than to have the days where I can't even go there at all. I can't even go there. Can't do afford go there. Only dreaming about it. Leave it. See, better we can go there and actually do it than to say, we ain't going there at all. So those are this is stuff with this length less where it be like, it's better knowing that there's a reality. I think you can actually live without this stuff. But you ain't going back to the days where we didn't have this stuff. You actually have to go through it and say, when we actually get it back, like, oh wow, actually ain't going back to those days where we didn't have this stuff. Hey, great. There's a better way. There must be a better way, bro. But hey, we ain't going back to those days when we didn't have these stuff. We're going back there. And this the thing about frame of perspective will be like, I'm out there so at this level, and you hear me, and it's like there's a reason why this level where I'm at today is way better than where I was before. I just can't sometimes I can't tell you why, bro. But there's a reason why. Even those complaining and all these stuff and all these things. There's a reason why today I am in a better position than I was way back when. I don't know why. Sometimes I even want to go back to know why. But it's like we prefer this day than any other day. And it's like cool. We prefer this day than every other day. We actually work to get this day. And I was like, cool. We actually have to work to get this day. And it's like, when we get this day, we ain't wanna go back. And that's the thing about freedom of perspective. Be like, sometimes people in certain situations, they'll be like, this is the best thing compared to way better than all these stuff. I have sometimes you can complain and wobble and all this stuff, but hey, there's a reason why this is the best situation. And this park, sometimes you always see me wobbling and all this stuff. Wobbling in the wobble, you actually find something. You, the listener, actually find a reason to say, this was the best answer. This was the best answer, given us situation, and we ain't changing that answer. The only thing we're gonna do is actually run up the answer, bro. That's the only thing we're gonna change. We're actually gonna go change. Only thing we're gonna change is actually gonna run up the answer. We're gonna actually go and get more of the answers, bro. That's actually the only difference, bro. Is actually getting more of the answers. Because actually see the days without it. And it's like, I know we actually get it back. And it's like, oh yeah, can't go back to the days without it. The podcast tell about the days without it. That's the reason for the podcast. We actually tell about the days when we did have tell about the days we did have these stuff to say, we ain't going back to those days. Good to know those days. Can go back and watch history. But we ain't going back to those days. We ain't going back. I think about both, like for example, the COVID-19 pandemic and stuff like that. The coronavirus pandemic and stuff like that. And you're bashing about virus, taking the vaccine and all this stuff. Boom. All of a sudden, you hear me going like, I don't even want to go back to the days where we don't even have this hand sanitizer and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow. I hate it every day. I have it. Hate it every day. I have it, bro. And it's like, yo, we don't even want to go back to the days we don't do all this stuff. And it's like, yo, why is that? Because it was for some reason, bro, the answer that they actually got, we cannot just complain about it and all this stuff. But yo, that answer is actually way better than the alternative and all this stuff. That answer is actually way better than the alternative more. And that's the thing about progress. The progress sometimes is so dirty and all these stuff that even though there's the regression, it's actually worse than the progress. It's like, oh, we actually hear all those terrible things. And the pandemic will be like, yeah, we actually went through that to say, yeah, we this is actually better than before. We actually way better than before. Actually way better than before. It's like, yo, we actually don't want to go back to the days where we don't have these stuff. All these stuff. 'Cause what happens is that all these stuff that basically make all these stuff that make our lifespan longer. It's like wow, actually going out can get my temperature check all these stuff way quicker and all these stuff. And it's like boom, all of a sudden you see me just walking and walking and they can just walking and they tell me like bro, yo this is sick. And walking and tell me like oh this sick. And I go, what? Boom bang quick. That's actually that's a terrible. That's a 2025 future. That's 2025 future. Be like this they can be like let's chill out. When you're out there so chilling out, bro, they actually give you everything to actually chill out and be like and all these stuff. But hey, but that's the thing. Be like it's the good days is actually it's good to actually talk to people that actually go through stuff to say and we actually see in our reality they out there so living. There's a reason why that reality was out there so better than what they was way better than what and all those stuff. So see people out there so going out and out there so having fun and all these stuff. And you see, say in the house studying and all these stuff. Boom, there's a reason why that is this thing. The hard work pay off, but it don't pay off in the way that the society see. You don't pay off in the way that the society see. You don't go there and see like okay, you see me as a balling in the society and all this stuff. You see a different kind of things and all this stuff. But sometimes you have to actually go through it to see what the hell is that blessing. What is that blessing? Hard to tell, but hey, better than zero. That's basically it for this episode. We're talking more episode to come. More episode to come. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter @ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.